we do have some takeaways that I think are pretty important from the hearing. Some stuff did come out despite every single House of Representative member doing almost nothing to get any substantive information out of Bill Barr. We do have some pretty good takeaways, some stuff that I heard and I said, yes, that is a step in the right direction. Now, a lot of this took place because he just volunteered it. I think he just said, all right, look, we're doing this, even though you're not asking me, about any of these substantive questions, I'm going to answer them anyways. So the first thing that he did was he announced the formation of a federal record-keeping entity. And the purpose of this was to collect all of the data on police incidents that involve the use of force. So there was a discussion, and are there any details about this? I haven't seen them yet. The hearing was just yesterday, so maybe this is going to come out in the next few days, but there were not even hardly any questions about it, about what I saw. So we have this national agency that they're going to be creating that's going to be sort of the clearinghouse. So different departments from different states, different localities. This is a big operation in order to consolidate this data. And specifically what he's talking about is cops who shoot, kill people, or injure people, but we don't know what the specifics are. Are these only going to be killings? Are these going to be anytime a gun is drawn, anytime shots are fired? Is it going to be anytime somebody dies in police custody? Is this going to be all police misconduct? Are we going to have a central clearinghouse? And then how is this going to be implemented across the board? Are we going to start with some of the big ones like NYPD, LAPD, Phoenix PD, some of the big cities? What's happening in Minneapolis? How are we going to apply this to the literally tens of thousands of small police departments around the country in small locales and small jurisdictions? So how are we going to do that? Can we talk about it at all? Or are we just going to just reclaim my time? I'm reclaiming my time. And he volunteered that information, and they had almost no follow-up questions about it. Would have been a very good thing to learn more about, but instead we spent about 8 hours listening to almost every single person in that room embarrass themselves for their 5-minute time slot. Some other takeaways that came out of the testimony that I saw yesterday was that Bill Barr is basically doubled down, and he's saying that we are going to continue to protect federal property. Federal property meaning the courts. And the courts are an important federal within federal jurisdiction. So if you remember, we've got kind of these different layers of jurisdictions throughout our country. You've got states that have their own constitution, their own rules, their own statutes. And then you've got the federal system that has their own, it's called federalism, right? We've got states' rights, we've got federal government rights. Some states have the power to do certain things, while some of those rights are reserved to the federal government. And there's a complex interweb of these different rights and responsibilities and obligations going every which way, every direction. And so, Bill Barr is saying that one of the main things that the federal government needs to do is to protect federal property. And that's the reason why they brought the protesters in, or the law enforcement officials from the federal government to come and handle the protesters. And I got to be honest with you, I can't disagree with that. I cannot disagree with the federal government protecting federal property. That federal court is very important. It's very, very important. There are people that have cases that are going through there. There are many, hundreds and thousands of defendants, people with cases who need to see their cases resolved. We've got courts, we've got judges in there. We've got court clerks in there. We've got U.S. attorneys and prosecutors. You've got defense attorneys like myself. I'm a big believer that change should happen within the justice system, but burning down a federal court building and eliminating or overthrowing the United States government in a way that is not going to allow other people to access justice is just simply not acceptable. It just isn't. And I happen to agree with federal Attorney General Barr on this point. When peaceful protesters become violent, the government needs to do something about this. And this is pretty consistent, I think extremely consistent across all of the other videos that I've made on this channel. Property rights are very important and we need to protect them. I empathize with the protesters. I empathize with the cause. I've made it my life's work. Justice reform my life's work. And this is something I'm very passionate about. But that doesn't mean you have the ability and the freedom to start going and destroying other people's properties. That is not okay. It cannot happen. If the federal government said that they're not going to protect our federal courts or our federal buildings, then what would stop this same incident from happening all around the rest of the country? It's happening in Portland. We saw these little sparks happen in Minneapolis and Seattle. And if federal law enforcement stands down, these court buildings are going to literally burn to the ground. And if you think that's hyperbole, we're going to run through some other footage from other people who are boots on the ground that show that these peaceful protests are turning into violent protests. When that happens, there needs to be a response from the federal government. And quite frankly, I think to not do so is actually undermining our cause. It is hurting the cause of criminal justice reform. To allow continued property destruction, fires being set, buildings burned down, people being killed, it is not winning the hearts and minds of other Americans. And we need those people in order to advance our cause. So I actually totally side with Bill Barr on this one. We have to stop these violent protests, these violent riots that are sort of evolving into property destruction, mayhem, chaos, and death.